Renzi, I see you're on as well. I haven't seen you before. I'd love an intro if you'd like to give an intro while we're waiting for other people to get logged in.
Yes. Hi, I'm Lindsay Richardson, and I provide ancillary services to my clients. And two of my clients are interested in hemp farming. And so I wanted to be a part of this to see from a compliance standpoint or just to understand more in terms of what they're getting into to see how I can support them.
Awesome. Well, good. Welcome.
I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Randall Reiser. He's just sitting in. We're actually he's with me. We're on an archaeological dig on our property, and he's overseeing the archaeological dig.
Oh, no way! That's fascinating. So how did that come about?
We have several tribes from thousands of years ago of Native Americans that actually resided on there, and we are finding artifacts from thousands of years ago, and it led to us to do an archaeological dig that's leading to more information on how they lived, what they ate, how many of them were in groups of numbers from small to big. It tells us a lot. It's pretty amazing doing a documentary on it, and he's documenting everything. But he's also he's a biologist too, and he's been right along with us with our hemp farm while we're in operation.
I love it. Well, let all real quick dive in now too, since I'm so glad you're here. Actually, we'll give it a couple more minutes so that we can get more people logged in, and then I would love for you to kind of do an intro, talk about how you got into the industry. I'm happy to open it up for questions. If you guys have specific questions that come up throughout the discussion, feel free to add comments into the chat. If you would like to raise your hand, just please be mindful of asking one question and then moving on. This isn't necessarily a open discussion. Depending on the size of the room that we get to, we may be able to open it up towards the end, but really being respectful of everybody's time and the runway mic. But outside of that, does anybody else have anything that they want to share really quick before we get started? We have quite a few people logging on, and I'm really glad to see all of you. Also, I want to highlight Neil. I don't know if Neil is on. Neil is also or has been following along and working as well in this space and has been really passionate or is passionate about the carbon side. So I'd love maybe for an intro about what you might be working on if you'd like, and maybe to chime in on some of the discussion, Neil, later on. I kind of called you out and put you on the spot.
Yeah, you kind of caught me, and I was eating some lunch here, so it's always ad hoc, I guess. Eh? Yeah, I understand. Maybe on the 5th we're going to have a conversation. I'm sort of soliciting the community here of suppliers, right? Growers, hemp growers, who trying to get an agenda for what sort of research or cooperative effort to get an early handle on what all the hemp opportunity as far as USDA programs and things like this. I did a quick check-in to a group here at Colorado State University that's building very sophisticated carbon flow models for agriculture. And because I've been seeing some of these pictures that have been posted up about the standing hemp of 15, 30 feet tall, and while we're waiting around for the buyers, the manufacturing and the processing group, how can hemp be experimented with, right, before you get yourself into a contract you can't deliver against? And it's quite amazing. I mean, that the biomass that comes up in 130 days on that California farm is something, that those that are in the carbon business should be very interested in that, because that's a big shift, 30 tons, not knowing whether it's all extracted to manufacturing and then all the carbon issues that go with that downstream stuff. But in the short run, while people are trying to sort this out, whether or not this hemp crop could be used to help with some of the weed species that are escaping the various chemical herbicides. Yeah. So in any case, some folks are looking at those pictures and say, "Wow, that's really going to choke out some of this stuff that I have in my field. I can't control chemically anymore." So I'll leave over to you since we're a bit on the post side of opening. Yeah, I hope to visit with you people on the 5th, right, Mandi?
Yes, October 5th, we've got a carbon discussion, and we're bringing together really an opportunity to ask some of the questions. And like you said, dive into what do we need moving forward and how do we lay this out with research and some people that have been in the industry for a long time, and have been studying it for a long time and really have got credibility within their space. So I welcome you guys to join. Well, with that, I'd love to welcome, I'm really, really excited about having you on here, Douglas, and sharing what you've been working on and kind of how long you've been in the industry. And again, for those of you that are on, keep your mics on mute while you are not talking. If you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand with the icon down in the bottom. For those of you that are new to Zoom or using Zoom, you can actually grab a hold of or highlight a screen and move them around. So if you want to move me to the top or Douglas and Randall up to the top, you're welcome to do that as they're speaking. Then you can kind of see where they're at. Or in the upper right-hand corner, you can actually change it to speaker view so the person who's talking is larger on your screen. But that's up to you. A reminder that this is recorded, and so we also keep all of our content transcribed and available on our Hemp hallway. I would love to show off what our Hemp hallway does, and so maybe we'll take a little bit of a break in the middle, and I just like to kind of show you where you can register and log in and connect with the people that you're finding here. Chat is open. We do transcribe all of our meetings, and the chat is added to our transcribed notes. And then if you go to globalhempassociation.org or hemphallway.com, you'll be able to find all of the notes and ways to connect and things like that. So with that, I'll turn it over so that we can be respectful of time and get to what everybody is here for. So thank you very, very much for everybody showing up. And Douglas, take it away. Can you hear me?
Right.
Oh, you're good.
So yeah, it's a pleasure. My name is Douglas Mauldin. I have a hemp company called Tennessee River Gulf. I originally started growing in California almost 20 years ago. I had some friends out west that kind of took me in and showed me the ropes there, and then I moved back to close to my home state, Mississippi, and in 2015, it was 14 when it went legal for the hemp to actually be grown in the state of Tennessee. And I told my father, I said, I'll come back and we can try to give it a go outdoors and see how everything will go. And so far, it's we've been able to grow really great crops in Tennessee. It has it's basically the humidity level is just perfect. It's not too humid. In some states, it's too humid. Down in Mississippi, some people have tried it, but we've had better luck in Tennessee. We've harvested at one time over 52,000 pounds, and our highest CBD levels were, and this is all organic. We don't use any type of chemicals that aren't certified. Everything's USD organic, and we our highest levels for outdoors, depending on what strain, was over 17%, and with a THC level below 1%. A lot of people are having tough times, depending on their state, where they can. Where depending, some states are lower than they're like 0.03 for the THC, and so it's really hard to grow higher CBD levels and not have higher THC levels. And so there's a fine line where to stop and where to harvest that plant before it's too late, depending on your state regulations. And so we've been pretty successful with that. we've seen that if we go over about 17%, that the THC levels in our strains that we're growing, which we can talk about clones also versus seeds, but we particularly like to go with clones, and that's what we target our market, because it's just it's a sure thing that you can guarantee you have good female clones, versus some people do like to do seed. But anyways, if there's any questions about that, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what I've got going on.
I like it. So tell me a little bit about how you got into this. How many years have you been growing? Are you in fiber at all? Growing anything for fiber?
Okay, so no fiber for us. We were strictly flower. I do have some friends down in Mississippi that are doing fiber, and it is an interesting project. You come to a fine median with flower versus fiber, and the fiber, it is strictly for your products like ropes and clothing or whatnot. And so it with us, we were basically sticking with flower because of our CBD oils that we process, and we have tinctures and pain creams are our main two sellers. We've tried the gummies in the past, but because of what our company represents is basically what you can take orally. But the fiber, there's nothing wrong with it. It depends on what market you're trying to target.
Sure. No, yeah, there's absolutely, in fact, I was going to say, maybe if Gary would love, I had an awesome opportunity to go down and watch a harvest on a fiber crop in North Carolina with Gary. And so speaking about volume and then what that looks like, especially on the carbon footprint, right? So tell me a little bit about some of the challenges and where opportunity is moving forward in the CBD industry and where you're at in the...
Okay, so...
Go ahead.
Okay, for sure. Well, I'll tell you this much. If I had one recommendation for anybody who's getting started out in hemp, I would recommend starting out small. I would not try to, just because you have a bunch of land and it might be organic, and doesn't mean you need to go all out the first year. I highly recommend starting out with 1 to 5 acres tops. And also it depends on your climate and and where exactly you're farming your crop is really detrimental on when you're going to plant it. And then also where you're getting your clones from is very important, or if you're going to run seed. So with me, when we first started out, I think we started out the first year we did like 5 acres. And I'm glad we didn't go any bigger, because we learned a lot that year. And when you're outdoors, and it depends on exactly where you are, but you're always going to have bug problems. And one of the first things we faced outdoors, because it was cool, and if the temperatures are below 9 degrees, you're going to see you can get aphids. And aphids can be a big problem and really damage your plant and take over at a rapid number, faster than you could imagine. Well, the first problem we faced were aphids. And then we found out that there are, and everybody has their opinion on different organic products. There are several different products that you can use that kill aphids, and I'm not trying to promote any product, but one of them that we use that are also effective on spider mites is called No Fly. And No Fly is certified organic, and we treated it with No Fly first. There are other competitors that are also organic that you might go to, and that's fine as long as it's effective. Well, then we had a drought, and fortunately we had ways to irrigate. We had a 57-day drought, and a lot of the farmers weren't prepared for it where we were, and a lot of them lost their crops because of the drought. Well, I highly recommend, if many reasons to go small is so you can have the option to irrigate. Irrigation can be very expensive, but at the same time, it's very important and very effective if you run into a drought like we did. Well, we were able to irrigate our 5 acres and save it, and it actually made an incredible crop. But right before we were harvesting, about 2 weeks before, we ran into a moth problem, and the moths were coming in at night, and they were laying eggs, which were turning into little caterpillars or worms. We call them bud worms. People have different names for them. It just depends on where you are. Well, these little worms were going into the flower, and they were boring into the bud, into the stem, and it was causing it to basically rot and decay. Well, 2 to 3 weeks before harvest, that's a nightmare. Well, a lot of people didn't know how to control it, but there is an organic spray that you can look for, that we finally located something so close to harvest. People are very anal about spraying anything at all. Some people just say, hey, let's take the risk and just harvest it early. Well, we found an organic spray that is a BT is the name of it. And we did basically a fog spray is a lot more effective. And when you're spraying anything like this, you can't just spray just the organic spray. In order to bring the worm out of the bud where it's bored into, you have to have an attractant. And so you use some type of sugar, and the sugar will attract the worm out of the bud to go out and get the spray and actually get it on its skin, which eventually it'll just dry it up because it's a salt is what it is. And so many people were ineffective with it. They were like, oh, we're spraying this product and we're not having any results. Well, you have to put some type of sweetener in there to attract the worm out of its hole. And also, when you spray this, you want to do it late in the evening, is about as dark as you can go, because the worm is more apt to come out of its hole in the evening time to feed. And so anyways, then after that, we were successful, and we got a grasp on what were our main challenges. And the next year, we went way bigger. We went 52 acres, which added up to being about 82-mile rows of hemp. It was over 140,000 plants the next year. We were able to get irrigation to all of our fields, and we already had the knowledge of the year before of what challenges we were going to face, whether with the weather or the insects. And so we were prepared, and our crop that year was one of the best crops the agriculture department said they'd ever seen. Now, another challenge that most people face is, after they get this great crop, where are they going to get rid of it to? Well, many reasons I recommend not going too big too fast is, you want to make sure you have a source before you harvest. You want to have a source and outlet where you can sell your product. A lot of Tennessee farmers were not prepared for that. When I say a lot, I say over 80% of Tennessee farmers, they didn't have a source lined up. Well, unfortunately, they were stuck with a lot of their flour and weren't able to get rid of it in time. If you have a good source or a processor, I highly recommend lining up your business with him and letting them know how much you're going to farm and how much you think you're going to harvest, and basically pre-sell it to them beforehand. That's your insurance for you, to protect you in the long run, because you can do all of this hard work, and at the end of the finish line, you're stuck with a great product and nowhere to go with it. And that's a bad place to be. But anyways, most people now do have sources and outlets now and processing locations, and that's what I would recommend. If there's anything else, that's just a little bit I can touch on. I've got more we can talk about if there's any questions.
Yeah, so somebody was asking about buffer planting to control pests. Buffer planting? Are you using any type of buffer planting to control pests?
Okay, so we do. Well, we do have a natural source of that I get from. So you can order different types of insects to fight other insects, and we've used that, but we found that it's somewhat the bigger you go, the harder it is to have control, because it's almost overwhelming for your insects to go out and too much territory for them to basically control. If it's smaller, I recommend it. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then somebody else asked, what type of insurance are you using? Or are you able to provide insurance or get insurance for weather issues and things like that?
Okay, yes, they're depending on your state. Tennessee does offer an insurance, basically a crop insurance, and it depends on how big you go, what they can do for you. I would highly recommend it, because one year that we were farming, it was about a week before harvest, we had a huge wind shear come through our area, and it was strong winds over 50 miles per hour, and it laid down a lot of our plants. And anyways, a lot of people didn't have crop insurance at the time, and a lot of them lost their crops because of the damage of the wind and the rain. But I highly recommend, if your state does offer it, I highly recommend that you get it, because unless you're growing indoors, there's no guarantee that you can control Mother Earth. Mother Earth, she's going to do whatever she wants to, whenever she wants to. And so I think that's a big plus if your state offers insurance, for sure.
Yes. So, okay. So another question is, Vincent says, thanks, Randall, for your insight. Have you ever considered indoor farming for propagation or the entire process until harvesting?
Yeah, I highly recommend indoor. Indoor, you're not able, of course, to go as big, but you're able to hone in and have more focus on your plants, which you're going to, of course, have more control. And I have a friend in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's strictly indoor now. He was tired of fighting all of the pests and problems outside, and so he really put his focus on about a 5,000 square foot indoor project, and he has a good market that he's created. He has a company called 615 CBD is his company. And anyways, I recommend for people that, if you're looking for a high-end flower market, and you have the market and you have the locations, there is great profit to be made on indoor CBD. And the success rate is about 75 to 80% higher than people who are farming outdoors. If you can even farm greenhouse, I recommend greenhouse, because you'll still have protection of a ceiling and a roof above you. But it also depends on where you are. I mean, I have a lot of friends on the West Coast in Oregon that they don't face a lot of the problems like we do in Tennessee. So it really depends on what you're able to do. But indoors, I give 2 thumbs up for 100%. And then again, when you start out indoors, I wouldn't invest too much money your first grow. When you're growing indoors, you shouldn't grow over 3 to 4 months, so you can have a quicker turnout. And when you're growing outdoors, most people usually just get one harvest, and it's not always a guaranteed harvest. So indoors, you can harvest at least 3 to 4 times a year, depending on how your setup is. And it's a great learning experience, and then you can get bigger as you go. But when you start out indoors, I would definitely just do something small, something about 10 to 15 feet by 20 to 25 feet, nothing too big. And because your investment with something like that's still going to be well over $10,000, depending on your materials.
Awesome. So, if you guys have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I saw that I had one from earlier, Bill, about the THC level mandated by the USDA and asking how you'll comply, Doug. But I'm curious, I don't know if that was already answered. So if it is,
I'll be glad to add on a little bit more about that area.
Please.
Okay, so it once again, it goes back to your state regulations. Tennessee, our state, fortunately, has risen the bar for THC levels. They've gone up to basically 1%. And anyways, that's really given us an opportunity to grow stronger percentages in your CBD. And so in our state, the Delta 8 THC is now legal. And so in our state, they allow anything that is derived from the hemp plant, and then it can be processed into Delta 8. And so that really helped us out, because if we had anything that had a higher percentage of THC, our state allows the processors to extract it out. And depending on your state and your laws, if they're able to extract it, then you can still separate your CBD and your THC to your legal limits. If that maybe hopefully answers a little bit of what you're talking about.
Okay, awesome. There's lots of questions that keep coming in. Amber said, wouldn't this be a good option for the small year-round farming you're recommending?
Yes, repeat it one more time.
Wouldn't this be a good option for small year-round farming you're recommending?
For indoor?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's when you start an indoor grow, it's going to become addicting, because it's basically plant a seed and watch it grow. And when you have an indoor grow room, you want to spend time with your plants on a daily basis, if at all possible. Some people neglect their plants, and then you can see the results when you neglect your plants. But you'll see that you're going in there every day. It becomes a passion, and you'll be able to notice things quicker the more time you spend with your plants, in response of what you're giving them nutrients wise, how much light you're giving them. Are you doing soil versus hydroponics? And I highly recommend starting out with soil, and LED lights. And if anybody is interested in, I have, there's a light company in Maryland that I highly recommend. These guys are basically based out of Johns Hopkins University, and incredible engineers that I've met through growing in the years. So I highly recommend LED lights and soil. Some people try to go head first and try to do the hydroponics. 90% of people that try hydroponics for the first time fail, regardless of how much knowledge they think they have. So that's one reason, if you want to get a good crop, I would go soil and make sure it is organic, and it's not hard to find organic soil. One of the soils I recommend is Coco Loco. It's made by Fox Farm, and it's got great microbes in it, and basically probiotics for the plant already in the soil, and that's a good go-to. And when I say LED lights, this is the reason I recommend soil and LED lights, is because it's going to keep your costs lower. Your LED lights don't run your electric bill up as much, and then they don't get as hot. If you're running, high pressure sodium lights, your room tends to get a lot hotter and your electric bill is a lot higher. And when I say higher, I'm saying 50% higher than LED lights. And so if anybody is interested, I can give them the information where to get great LED lights that are custom built for your size room, and they can build them. However, it's called Jump Lights is the name of the company. But don't start out too big. Like I said, do a room like 15 foot by 20 foot, something of that nature. That way you're able to keep an eye on everything and monitor it. And, don't go over 100 plants. Some people even starting out have these small grow tents. The grow tents work, and the grow tents do about 6 plants depending on the strain and how much veg time you give them. Also, when we're talking about indoor and veg time, I wouldn't veg your plants too long, because the taller they get, the more problems you're going to be faced with. And if you keep your plants shorter, it's easier to maintain it starting out. Now you can experience more with longer veg times when you have more knowledge and you feel more confident, and you're able to time off, and you can do what's called a trellis system. That's for more experienced growers. But anyways, if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to answer.
There was a really good question on here, and my computer froze up for a little while, so I'll go back and find it. But to keep things going, talk about your waste. If you're producing or growing for flour or for extraction, what type of waste do you have, and where is it going? What's volume like that look like?
That's a great question. I love putting anything that we have as waste, and I turn it into a compost. And basically, anything from our stalks, from our stems, to our extra leaf matter that we have, any buds or flowers or plants that go bad, we have this big pile. And to create a compost, you want to keep the heat in. So an easy way to do it is you have a wall, you can put it up against one of your walls of a shed or something, and you take a tarp, just like a 10 foot by 20 foot tarp, and you split it open halfway, and you put all of your matter there, and then you can spray it down with a little water, and then cover it back up and keep it covered, and you can add on to it. And then when your next season comes around, and when you're adding on to it, you also want to give it a till, to flip it over a few times, just to keep anything mixed. It'll break down the matter better. And then when your next season comes around, you can use this as premium fertilizer. And that's what I was telling Mandi a few days ago about what we use a lot of our stuff for. If it's biomass that we're not using, we'll take it back and turn it into compost and make an incredible fertilizer mix. And we've tested this not just on hemp, but I did a test run this past year on a vegetable farm, and we mixed 50% Coco Loco mix and 50% the mix that I'd created with this compost. And we had some of the biggest squash and corn, and we had okra, and we tested on several different vegetables. And then we had another test plot just of regular soil, and it was at least 50% or more vegetables, and they were twice as big. So it does work, and don't let any of that go to waste. Use that, and I promise you will be rewarded for it later on. But just take anything, like I said, any of your stalks or any of your leaf matter or any of your bad plants that didn't make it, and just store them all in there, cover them up, and occasionally you can water them just if they get too dry. But yeah, absolutely save any of your matter for sure.
Awesome. I know that there's a lot of discussion. Gary or Kyle, I don't know if either of you are on. Kyle down in Texas, my computer is kind of frozen, so I see only a couple of us on the screen right now. And I don't know if it's my computer or Zoom. If anybody else having problems, you can hear me okay, Douglas?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Okay, good. But I would love maybe an update on the industrial side if Kyle, I don't know if you'd be interested in sharing kind of what you found down in Texas. I can't see, so maybe unmute and speak up if you are available.
Sure, yes, I am here.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I would love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so right now in Texas, we are growing some fiber, more of an industrial scale R&D. We're going to have about 800 acres, probably more than that we'll be running through decortication. Not really enough to feed large suppliers, but enough to tune up machines at scale and actually start that conversation with end products. So far, we've been excited with some of the Italian stuff. One of the issues we're dealing with is the day length and what fiber varieties are going to work in my part of the U.S. We ran a lot of Canadian stuff last year, great varieties, great germ, like a good seed size. And that's something I'm going to point out is that hemp seed varies a lot. It could vary anywhere from 80,000 to 40,000 seed per pound. If you're trying to de-hole, the larger your seed size, the easier it is to de-hole and the larger heart you're going to get. If you're trying to plant, when we look at this from the industrial products, this is almost a whole different thing from what we were just talking about with some of your clones. We're going to be direct seeding everything. With that larger seed, it's going to be easier to handle, generally have better germ, and it's easier to mechanically plant. But when we, so far, like I said, the Italian stuff or the Canadian stuff we've pretty much established that it will not work down in my part of Texas and probably bottom half of the U.S. But the Italian, we had some Aletta Campana that looked really good. We had some MS-77. We had mixed results with it, but we had some really good MS-77. I think it was down in the Gulf. And that's going to be Australian. We've got a couple, I'm trying to remember, a little bit of the Colorado stuff. The Colorado stuff we're close. It's been real hit or miss. So identifying the genetics at this point, we feel like when we hear about operations that say, hey, we're going to do 20,000 acres of hemp, and yet you're bringing in genetics that have never been tried, that makes us real nervous real fast because companies have tried that in Texas, and you saw tons of seed given away. People planted it and it failed. And so we're still working on that proof of concept. Will this grow? What's going to look like? How is the day length going to manipulate it? So that's kind of the short. I feel like we're making progress, but we probably have more questions than we started with 2 years ago.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions? I cannot see the screen. I'm trying to log into my cell phone so that I can maybe read the captions. But if anybody has questions, please don't hesitate to jump in. Gary, are you on as well? I'd love to kind of hear what you found down in North Carolina and with some of your crops. Gary, I don't know are you on? Anybody else have any other questions that they'd like to ask? Dive in. Douglas, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or Kyle?
We just had someone make a comment. Their Canadian grain flowered early and went hot. A lot of what we had in our Canadian stuff that flowered early, we didn't even test it just because we didn't get that far. But that's a really great point to bring up is you're doing your initial proof of concept. You need to be pulling potency tests. I've heard too many stories of people that have been promised this seed is, maybe it's CBG or maybe it's industrial. It will not. It's impossible for this plant to go hot, and then it goes hot. Be careful with the Chinese varieties. They generally go hot. So that's another thing. It doesn't matter what you're promised. You need to be pulling potency tests through the year until you've established that variety in your area is not going to go hot, and you've got that THC under control.
Absolutely agree, 100%, and that's many of the reasons why I tell people if they're going to start out, don't dare go too big too fast until you know the strain, you know your territory, you know how it's going to do. And running hot, I totally agree. When we're getting close to harvest, we test every week just to be on the safe side. and that definitely is 100, the safest thing you can do, just to protect yourself for insurance.
I see Tim Childs. Are you on or available as well? You're in a different area and also on the cannabinoid side this year. Would you mind jumping in and kind of sharing a little bit about what you found and what you've been working on?
Yeah, sure, Mandi. I'm a second-year Ohio cultivator. I am cultivating for flower, and I did get a result back recently that came back 0.4 with a 0.07 variance. So I'm going to retest the crop. They're going to allow me to homogenize it, and then instead of taking the terminal 8-inch shoot off of 5 plants like they do, they'll take basically whatever they get when they stick their hand into a tote, more or less. But I was told that the USDA allows the state to take the seeds and the stems out of the sample this morning when I was talking to our state rep. So to hear you down in Tennessee say that 1% limit is permissible, I'm kind of curious about that. I did a Google search and found that Tennessee's a USDA approved program. I know the USDA changed the guidelines from 0.5% to 1% before they notified the authorities, but my understanding is every state that's USDA's being held to a 0.3% THC limit.
Yeah, Tim, it's been in a gray area with our state. They haven't penalized anybody, any of the farmers that as long there were some. I think we had one that was around 0.9, and we called the ag department. We told them, we said, will this be okay? They said because of the Delta 8 right now and the Delta 8 laws, it basically is putting it into a gray area, and it is questionable, but they aren't penalizing anybody at this time, and they really haven't, said for sure if they were going to. It's still, it's still up in the air.
Yeah, I think it's likely that there will be state by state differences. I can really appreciate that, but I think it illustrates the importance of the industry getting on the same page so that we're all being held to the same standards. Otherwise, there's a lot of questions that I would ask as a consumer. And just to be fair, I mean, the government's talking about putting $400 million into the hemp industry. New York was one of the states that was targeted as getting $100 million, but right now the only hemp that you can sell in the state, as I understand it, is hemp that's grown in New York. So
that's correct.
It doesn't really help me as an Ohioan to listen to other states getting federal money. And it's just, I think it's important that we're on a level playing field. And it's one thing to talk about Chinese product and having to compete with Chinese foreign product that doesn't meet safety standards. The workers aren't being paid proper or whatever. But in the United States, we need to get on top of this quickly so that the industry has some standardization. Just I don't really like to be overly regulated, but
it's got to get
some. We just need to get it figured out. And to be the point about the Chinese fiber going hot must be a good comment. I know of a grower here in the state that had some Chinese fiber go hot. So it definitely the provenance, the location of the seed source does really matter. That's a very good comment made out of Texas there.
And Mandi, Kayla Hurd here. I just want to, make a quick point about what we're talking about, this 0.3% THC USDA, limits. It to just make a quick mention and a reminder to everybody that number is completely arbitrary. And when we're trying to write new laws and we're lobbying for new laws and we're pushing the USDA to make these changes, 1%, getting them to push it to 1%, which is what a lot of these groups are working on, is the first step. The end goal isn't 1%. The end goal is end use, right? Like THC limits shouldn't matter if traceability-wise this product is going into a fiber end use. And so I just want to bring up that reminder because we're all on, fighting the same good fight here. And when we do see that legislation is going to be written to USDA is going to be updating their policies, that we do need to make sure we're signing those petitions and we're being a loud voice and making comments when it's open comment, that 0.3% THC is it's holding our farmers to an unrealistic standard, and we should be going for end use.
I agree 100%. It's limiting all of the farmers. It's creating boundaries and borderlines that are not necessary, and that makes it very difficult. Exactly like Tim said, just like New York putting that limitation where you can only do their CBD in their state and they don't allow anything coming in. It limits the other farmers that are surrounding states. And I totally agree, Kayla. Something needs to be done because the farmer works really hard, and sometimes a farmer is close to another state that could do business with the other state, but if they put up those stipulations, it really limits them.
Absolutely. I don't know if anybody's on. There have been some good questions about recommendations, or Armando, if you'll share your contact information in the chat for recommendations about. Can you guys hear me twice? Is it echoing, or can you only hear me once?
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, see, this is all moving around now, so I'm hoping it's logging back in. But share your contact information for recommendations for strains to grow in Florida for fiber grain and fiber. So I don't know if anybody has anything that they'd like to drop in the chat or connect with.
Well, and Mandi, if it'll let you, I think this is a great opportunity to show off how the hemp hallway works. I mean, it won't load. Oh no. I wonder if I could share my screen. No, it won't let me. Well, anybody who's looking for these types of resources, make sure you check out Hemp Hallway. It's literally like a Google search that'll actually give you the results that you need. You can go in there and search for different industries and grain, and dip by region. You can go on this map and look by region and see what other people are doing in your area. So it's just hemphallway.com is where you can, I've been utilizing it the last few days, and just in the last few days, I think I've made like 7 connections with people nearby that I didn't even know were working on similar projects. So thank you, Mandi, for this resource for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. So the whole purpose of this, you guys, is to create a platform where you guys can connect after these meetings. On Hemp Hallway, you'll log in, you request an invitation if you've not already been sent one. If you've already been sent one, you can reset your password or go ahead and fill that profile out. The cool part is moving forward, when you register for events, it's just a simple click that you want to attend the event, and then you'll get the login information. You won't have to fill out the entire profile every time for those that have been multiple times to our events previous. It was kind of a headache. And then also on there, be sure to engage in conversation. There have been a lot of questions that came up. One recently that I'd be interested, Zev, I don't know if your group is working on this, or if you may have a resource about which states are following USDA mandates and regulations and which are under their own. I don't know if anybody has that information or if we can kind of collaborate to that. But the Hemp Hallway is a perfect place to start this discussion and start gathering this information and sharing it. Zev, are you available? Would you be open for an update kind of about what you've seen on the farming side? Are there any other questions for Douglas?
Hi, Mandi.
Yeah. Hi, you're on.
Hi. Farming, I think people have covered it a lot. The thing that I keep seeing is that there's still so much variability in the industry. And now I just read something recently that they're saying that plants go hot because of genetics, not because of location. But I know that there's plants out there, that there's seeds out there. We verify hemp seeds that will do one thing in one location and something fairly different in another location. So a lot of it is soil, light, of course, in terms of flowering time. So, I mean, I think the advice that I already heard was, if you're new to this, don't plant too much and try to plant a few different varieties to really get a sense of what grows well in your location. It's definitely it's a steep learning curve at the beginning, and I'll be curious to see how much hemp the USDA says that we harvested this year. The rumor has it it's going to be even lower than 2020, but we'll see. So for farmers, and especially for large farmers who are wanting to look at this as a rotation crop, they also need to really figure out what works, what they want as an end product, and then what grows best in their location. So we're still very much in the learning phases, and we definitely still need good processors. I sound like a Canadian.
Well, and Zev, I think you make a great point about, planting multiple varieties, and to be successful when you are planting multiple varieties, one thing that I have seen is not taking proper documentation and not making the right notes to see, this is what I did differently. I have firsthand experience where a farmer thought they grew two things exactly the same, just to go back and look at their notes and realize they had done things a little differently. So for people just starting out, ensure that you're making those notes, you're keeping track of what you're doing. You are using different varieties, and it's fun to experiment.
What about? Go ahead.
Oh, Mandi, this is Jeff Nunes.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. So having our genetics actually be made in the region that we're planting is highly important. And what I've noticed throughout our industry, especially for the CBD, just my hypothesis dealing with the medical industry is we may be picking too early, that we may need that THC to degrade naturally. And while that THC is oxidized, it converts into the CBN. So our genetics that we have, we may be jumping the gun on the harvesting part by seeing the THC spike. But if we wait until the trichrome has actually matured and then ferments that starch into sugar and that sugar into the alcohol base, which is the cannabinol, and that alcohol base, the CBN, is something that I think we need to look at a little bit more instead of trying to harvest ripened. But also with our genetics, we need to make sure that, once again, I agree with the others that have spoke about the environment and the different phenotypes, and that's what I like the comment of the chemotypes. Very, very true. These are all influencing because the THCs or the trichrome is actually just trying to protect the gland to increase the possibility of impregnation. So when we start seeing these different varieties come from different countries, different latitude, longitudes. So that's what we're doing here in California, is starting to create our own regional seed bank, and then be able to help the farmers in our region by having a processing facility, just like we would with cotton.
Does anybody else have anything to comment? I could talk about this process or this piece, the processing and the facilitation of, and maybe this is a good segue into some of the things that GHA has for us to get involved in. But I cannot see my screen. And so Kayla, I don't know if you'd be willing to take this, kind of lead this conversation, and I'm going to log out and see if I can get back in. Kayla, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. So is there any specific project you'd like me to talk about?
No, well, or what questions, right? I guess here's what questions, and then how do we actively move this forward, right? Douglas, I'm curious from you, what do you see in, next year? Where do you see more, I want to say involvement, but, as the industry evolves, what does that look like for next year and for as we're ending, harvesting season or coming up on harvesting season, where do we need to be as an association for next year's planting season?
Well, I totally agree with Mr. Nunez about, the states and with their regulations and everything. If we can all get on the same page and all the states have equal rules, I think this is going to help the industry grow. And once again, with all these limitations that individual states are putting on each other, it's going to make it harder for the farmer to grow. And also, if we can all individually, like he's saying, his state in California, in order for the farmer to do good in each of these individual states, just like Tennessee, California, or Texas, there needs to be exactly what he was saying in California. He has basically a seed bank. And what they've done is targeted the phenos and the genetics that grow best in California. If we do that and mimic that for all the states, this is going to benefit the farmer and give him more insurance to know for his individual state where he lives in, whether it's in Maine or whether it's in Idaho. But that'll give them insurance to know that this seed that they're getting from this seed bank is going to be exactly what they need and perfect for their area or their climate. And I truthfully think if we mimic that across the board, that this would help all of the farmers starting out, give them more confidence in their grow, if that would be possible.
I'm back on, guys, but I missed part of that, so I don't dare chime in. Does anybody else have anything? I'm sorry about today that it was such a headache. I finally just jumped off and I'm on my phone in another room, so I appreciate you guys and Zoom challenges.
Yeah, Mandi, I was just touching on, just to catch you up, basically what I think what would benefit everybody in all the states is exactly what Jeff was saying, having these seed banks in each individual state that targets the certain strains that are successful in that state. And if we all mimicked exactly what Jeff's doing in California, this is going to encourage that farmer who's starting out for the first time, who doesn't have experience. This is going to give them the confidence that, hey, I'm going to spend the money on this seed. I know that it's going to be the proper strain, and I won't face any issues. And so that, I think that right there would really help the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that would be worth moving forward. Maybe, Jeff, that's something you and I can dive into a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mandi, I can add something into that is the seed certification programs that states have, they are done at the state level. And that's exactly what they do is they take seeds from, that are grown in that state and put them in a variety of different environments and come up with ones that don't go hot. It's basically what they're looking for. So that infrastructure is in place. Now, the state's willingness or financial ability to do it really varies a lot, but I think we certainly could encourage our State Department of Agriculture to do statewide seed certification programs to help farmers know what they're getting.
Mandi, I'll comment. I've ran across a lady that she represents a company that does the seed tracking, and she has did a lot of work herself over and above the company, where they interface and do the seed tracking and also the taxation, the sales tax. And she's not only, and she's working with the Mississippi I think they're going to vote on it this coming month, actually. And she's also working with one of our members in Africa on theirs. So each state does it different, which is fine because that's the way our country's set up. But it would be nice to have a little bit of continuity. You know, we do have some basic that would be nice.
Absolutely. Okay, anybody else have anything that they'd like to add? There's so many of you on here I'd love to call on and hear from. Jay, I don't know what you're working on or what you've been finding. I don't know if you'd like to share.
Sorry. Thank you for calling me out. I've been enjoying and taking notes with everyone here. So we're looking at resort style properties to have some hemp demo fields. And, you know, I've been talking with a couple of experts, not enough people here, but I've been connecting with everyone on LinkedIn so that we can create some incubator spaces or demo fields for farmers transitioning out of animal products. And where the soil will not support hemp, I'm not fully educated on the difference between indoor farming and hydroponics. I know that's been discussed here, but whatever indoor farming, if any at all, will support hemp and hemp derivatives, as well as incorporating hemp derivatives into all the building materials that are possible. So reaching out to architects and builders that are doing hemp derivatives in 3D printing, as well as, you know, just hempcrete and things like that. So someone who has got a very strong presence on YouTube having to do with 3D printing, and I asked about hemp derivatives, he's like, and this is a global presence of someone with a global influence. And he's like, there's not enough of that yet. I've been able to look that up online to find that people are doing hemp derivatives and 3D printing and you know, things like that. So, you know, to either connect those or figure out how they can be placed on our properties, in our spaces, to really represent all the possibilities.
Excellent. Okay, well, Douglas, if you don't have anything else, Bill, I saw you had a couple of comments as well before I froze up and logged off. I don't know if you'd like to chime in. I know you're working on a few projects and actively involved with ASTM. Would you like to share what you've got going on?
As far as variety goes, the 0.3% in the field is mandatory 100% testing nationwide for 2022. There is no state exemption. If you break 0.3, burn your crop. That's it. There's no option to that. That's new regs for every state. We've spent about 6 years trying to prove there was such a thing as a CBD clone that can't go hot. We tested almost every supplier in the country at full term maturity, 100% failure. We finally got lucky after 12,000 tests, and we found one, which is now AOSCA listed, the first clone to achieve it. And it comes with a money back guarantee on 0.3% THC, drops at about 9% CBD. Good performer for a lot of others, but now most of the work we're doing here in Colorado is targeting the fiber industry and ASTM standards committees. I'm on a number of committees other than the hemp committees as well, trying to find a way to get suppliers and buyers on the same page in an infant industry. Like hemp, there's too many rules of thumb and not enough science. And so a producer and farmer doesn't know what spec he has to hit to get high value. A buyer doesn't know what material specification to look at to make sure it suits their processing. And we've come very far. It's a lot of work. 30 engineers from all over the world. And we're looking at right now about 15 different material qualities for a fiber, and then testing protocols to verify that condition for each one. And this will be, critical for the industry moving forward, because these things, particularly in the farmer, is my interest, is how do you assay the value of a crop? And so these testing standards are going to be able to reveal, is this 50 a ton or is this $500 a ton? And the tests are going to be able to set the price for every truckload in the future, because every processor has a different spec they need to meet for their product. So that's been really exciting work. And out of that has come a bunch of fascinating work from around the world, particularly in the EU, who takes climate change a lot more seriously than we do here. And it looks like, and this is all generic, it's not necessarily 100% hemp, they're feedstock neutral, but a bunch of stuff going on around the world now in what's called lignin first technology, where this ultra high grade hemp fiber would be a downstream byproduct of extracting pure lignin to replace petroleum in both liquid fuels and the chemical industry. But anyway, that's kind of what's going on at ASTM and what some of the engineers are bringing to the plate. And I encourage anyone who thinks they're going to produce a fiber product to coordinate to know how to make sure their crop has the highest value. So thanks, Mandi, and everybody else.
Yes, I love it. I think that's great feedback. I wish Kayla, she just texted me and can't get back on. I'm assuming Zoom is glitched for her as well. But I'd love to wrap you guys into a conversation around the biofuels and the energy sector, especially with the lignin. So it's fascinating that the textile grade fiber would be a byproduct now. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, but Bill, one of the questions is, instead of burning it, will they let you run it through a syngas unit or something to, there's things you can do like press it instead of just burning it.
Well, if I could, most of these processes, and this is in nomenclature committee at ASTM, what's the word to describe how you extract fiber, for example? And stem fractionization was my bet. Decortication went out because it's more well known, but fractionization can cover a lot of things. It could cover fast pyrolysis, which is a quick way to do bio-oil, doesn't get you fiber. But then there's chemical and biological, and I'm kind of leaning towards the biological approaches, using, kind of like, to make oil, it was organic material that's millions of years old. Well, most of the lignin first and the new biofuels people are trying to accelerate that process. So instead of millions of years with an agricultural input, you can get same day production of the same thing you would get from the million process. But incineration, there's a lot of projects that are just, if they have high natural gas prices, a ton of hemp fiber can replace $300 worth of propane, for example. So incineration is good.
What were you saying? Incineration what, Bill?
If you have a high energy cost, if you're on the natural gas pipe, it doesn't work. But if you're in a rural area that has to use propane or electricity to get their heat, a 1-ton bale of hemp will deliver $300 worth of thermal energy. And so that's the high. No one's offering that much for fiber right now, and just burning it to displace propane or electric heat pays the day.
Interesting. Oh, I would love to talk more about this side and dive more into the energy sector as it's really evolving. Or power or battery. I guess all of it's kind of encompassing.
Bringing up that, and the downstream of these lignin first extractions, versions of cellulose never before seen that have material properties never before seen. The two basics are nanofibrillated cellulose and microcrystalline cellulose, never before seen materials. Unusual property. Electrospinning of nanofibrillated created a thread that was stronger than spider silk. So right now, electrospun nanofibrillated cellulose is the strongest fiber in the history of the world. Now, how to produce it commercially, we don't know yet, but fascinating material property. The microcrystalline, there's people now thinking they're going to be able to make building materials that can store electricity as a battery. The microcrystalline cellulose is usually an electrical insulator. In this case, it's actually got some wacky electric potential characteristics. So I know one group in Canada is trying to layer microcrystalline cellulose with graphene layers to actually make a battery to get rid of all the heavy metals that currently are in batteries for cars. Early stage, but they're generating voltages and they're getting charge and recharge cycles. A lot of work to do. What's the round trip efficiency? How many cycles will that battery live, and et cetera, and other metrics. But that it works, fascinating.
Yeah. Herman, I see your hands up. Oh, go ahead. I don't know who just jumped in. Go ahead.
Karen Wilcox.
Hi, Karen.
This information is really, really great. but what I want to suggest is that if it has been published somewhere, peer-reviewed somewhere, that the citations be sent to Mandi and other people too, so that we can build for the government, which doesn't want to look at what we're doing, a credible source and of acknowledgement and research. And so as we're talking and sharing with one another what these new developments are and so on, we really need to document them if we can, so that we can really improve our communication of the credibility.
Absolutely. I think this is where the hemp hallway becomes really powerful also, because we can share media and share these documents or peer-reviewed content. And then it becomes searchable, and then really being able to plug in, each of these pieces. I love what ASTM is doing, and I'd love to continue conversation there as well when it comes to figuring out the value chain of each of these as well, each of these different components that we're applying a standard to. So I'd love to help, further that conversation. And I think that this data is a critical piece of it, Karen. So thank you for bringing that up. Tara, I see you're on. Are you still available? I'd love to have you chime in and maybe let us know what you're working on as well.
Sure. Yes, I'm here. I've been listening to all of this, and it's exciting. It's exciting, the stuff that's going on with these fibers. We recently, I mentioned before, we've been working with a few universities and some research foundations for a couple of different varieties that they have been growing as. And as Kyle mentioned, Illetta campana from Italy was one of them. And then there's the X59 variety, something like that. So what we found is pretty much what we were trying to do at this point is we are working with the decorticator, because obviously we're trying to set up a project in the US where we will be decorticating the hemp for fiber purposes. And working with the decortication company, they have a pilot plant set up. So we decided to get some bales off the fields and run it through the decorticator to see which ones worked out best. I can tell you right off the bat, the Chinese variety came hot. So we weren't able to use that at all. We weren't able to bale that at all. Of the other 15 varieties that we used, most of them had the issue that the fiber is breaking too much. The tensile strength is not there for us to be able to use it for textile applications. It mostly went into nonwovens. It is okay to go into nonwovens. It works fine, but not for textile applications. Also, the yield that we got from these bales was about 16%. From our facility in France, we usually get about 22% yield from the Futura 75, but the Futura 75 that was grown in Pennsylvania, we only got a 16% yield. So that actually accounts for some of the losses that go in there as well, because only 16% that means our logistics costs are going to be very high unless we are very, very, very close to the fields where they're growing. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and obviously trying to develop the product so that we can get the proper fiber in. And also for the cottonization of the material, we sent some of the material for cottonization. The lengths are reducing drastically. Even the decorticated fiber with less than 3% shive content, as soon as we're sending it for cottonization, the lengths come down to almost like 18 to 20 millimeters. They require at least something close to somewhere between 32 millimeters to anywhere between 45 millimeters to be able to spin it into yarn. So we are having some issues with that as well. The decortication lines we're currently working on is we have sent the bales to, we have a Cretes line We have a old Tamafa line that we use, and we also have been trying on with a Tatham line. So we're hoping one of them works out best, and hopefully we're able to get some fiber that can be spun into yarn. But mostly the fiber that has come off the fields from here, especially in Pennsylvania, it can be used for nonwovens, but for textile applications, it will be a little more of a challenge. So we need to get back to the drawing boards on that, work out with these research organizations to figure out exactly where the fiber needs to be in order for us to be able to use it for the textile applications. So that's pretty much the fiber side of it coming off the fields and where we are with it.
Kind of summing back up to seeds and understanding that they need to be grown or produced where they're going to be grown for what they're going to be grown for. So it's a lot of mapping this out.
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole bunch of mapping, and I see a question over here about the fiber data to ASTM. We haven't really done an ASTM test on it. We have been doing our internal tests on it, and we work with Jefferson University, who has kind of like a setup to be able to test all these fibers, but they're not ASTM certified. So it's a little bit cheaper for us. I'll be honest about it. But at the same time, it's a lot of mapping that's going into it. And the more we're trying to get into this project, trying to convince investors, making sure we get the funding in to be able to move into the market with our products. It's like one step forward, two steps back every single time. And I understand it's a new product. There's going to be some groundwork into it, but I'm really hoping, especially with the help of this group, that we can actually push forward and get something out sooner than later.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. We do have a couple of textile meetings that are coming up. Again, log in to the hemphallway.com and underneath the events, and you'll be able to see what those are. I'd love to have you come on as a guest speaker. And for any of you that have somebody that we'd like to highlight or that you'd like to hear from, please let me know or help connect us. And we can obviously invite them to come up as a guest. On both sides. If you're also interested in presenting, or if you've got something that we'd like to talk about, I'd love to have you up as well. With that being said, we're at about an hour and 15 minutes. I'm happy to stay on if you guys would like to network a little bit. But other than that, I'd really like to be respectful of Douglas's time. And is there anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off, Doug?
I just want to say thank you for everybody joining in the meeting today. I hope I answered any and everybody's question that I could. Please feel free to contact me by email. If anybody has anything else, I'd be glad to help out in any form or fashion. It was an honor, and I really had a pleasure talking with you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Feel free to contact me. I will be in touch.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay,
well,
thank you very much. We'll have a good day,
Yep.
you guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.